he couldn't pull up, but he actually extended where he was going to land, so none of the cameras got the pictures of the saucers there. And I thought it was really interesting on 60 Minutes when they're interviewing. I think it was Mike Wallace. And he brings this up. He didn't have to bring that up. He could have brought up anything else. But he said, yeah, that field of boulders was really big. And for those of us that know, what that field of boulders was, what a field of boulders was a bunch of saucers. And he had to go to a little place a little farther under, and that's why he burned so much fuel.
One of the keys to all of this, to this entire theory of why they're not telling us, why they're withholding, I think it was buried when Werner von Braun died. When Werner passed on, I think he knew a lot of things, may have told some people. Did you hear anything, John, about him?
No, I've read that he was at Roswell. And interestingly enough, before I ever got involved in this UFO stuff, which I told you was 1985,
right,
when I was flying for an airline called Air Club International, I had a trip to Bahamas, and we were there for a couple of days, and I signed up. I had a scuba diving card, and I signed up for a dive, and guess who my dive partner was?
Von Braun.
Von Braun. Now, I wish I'd have known, enough then to ask him some questions, just like, my dad died in 1978. He used to talk about saucers, but not that much. And it turns out he was right in the middle of it. I mean, he was on the board of Lovelace Clinic. Randy Lovelace was the Air Force surgeon that was transferred from Wright-Patterson to Albuquerque in 1947. And Lovelace Clinic was the place where they did a lot of the autopsies, or many of the autopsies. My dad was close to Jimmy Doolittle. Jimmy Doolittle was wrapped up in this thing. The former head of the second head of the CIA, I'm trying to think of his name, and he was part of MJ-12. He had a crush on my mom. These guys were all around the house.
Was that Alan Dulles?
No. It was, I'll remember the name. I'm getting into Alzheimer's here, and I can't recall anything.
Of course, the guy who jumped out of a window was Forrestal.
Forrestal, yeah. And, okay. But anyway, all those guys were around the house. If I'd have known anything then, it would have been great. I would have loved to ask him some questions, but I didn't get interested until 1985.
Where does this all lead us, John? What's going to happen? I mean, are we going to ever get disclosure, or what?
I thought no. When I did that Art Bell disclosure thing, I was firmly against it. And now I've heard some of the stuff that Dan Burrish has come out with, and an associate of, not an associate, but somebody who did the videos, a guy named Ron Garner, and he showed me some of those videos and told me some of this stuff. And it appears like MJ-12, which now apparently has 36 members, wants the information out, but they don't know how to do it. And they want the information out, but they want to put their spin on it. In other words, when I say that we're just an experiment, that it's a farm, it's harvest, they don't want that story. They'll go ahead and admit that J-Rod is from Zeta Reticuli 2,
and he's
but
here.
Their story is the story that if you've read anything about Project Serpo, that spin. And that spin is, Zeta Reticuli is hot, they play soccer, they tell time with a sundial, but you wouldn't want to go there because they don't eat the stuff that we do, and they have families in this, and that's all there is to it. And, of course, that's a spin. That's not the truth. And the way that you spin something is use a little bit of the truth and a little bit of what you want people to believe. The fact is they do come from Zeta Reticuli too, but they don't have families, they don't reproduce, they're cybernetic organisms, they're stamped, they're robots, they're here to carry on the experiment, which is somebody else's experiment.
What do you think of this Serpo group, where they claim that we sent astronauts in an exchange program with extraterrestrials?
We sent astronauts, but not 12 of them. We sent 3 of them. And that part of the story is true.
Did they come back?
3 came, 2 came back. 1 was crazy, 1 was normal, and 1 was dead. And I don't remember whether the dead one came back or they left him there.
And
at least that's the story.
These are Americans?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Serpo website, which had been down for about a month, is back up again. And it is as bizarre as anything I've seen, John.
Yeah, that's the spin.
Is there a lot of disinformation out there?
All of it is disinformation. I mean, you hardly can get any true information. For instance, the other day somebody said, hey, I heard somebody told me that 80% of the saucers that the public sees are ours. And I said, yeah, they are. I said, we've had them. We've been developing them since 1960. I mean, we've had it since all of those things are ours. There's a few of them that are alien saucers, but most of them are ours.
Most of them are ours.
Yeah.
But we were given the technology. We didn't come up with it on our own.
No, I think, and we weren't given, like I said, we don't have the stuff that can go, hundreds of times faster than the speed of light, because that has technology that Bob Lazar worked on for Dr. Teller, and what they were trying to do is figure out if we could duplicate it any way, and we can't. I mean, you take element 115 and a little chunk of it, an arrowhead chunk of it, pump in protons, bump it up to 116. There's an annihilation, and the annihilation throws off two things, the gravity A wave and antimatter. The antimatter is mixed with matter to create heat in a thermionic generator to create power for the craft, and then the gravity A wave is siphoned off to use for the gravity generators, which pulls it through space. And that's stuff that, I mean, so far ahead, we don't have a hope of being able to duplicate that stuff. We just don't have the materials.
Element 116, unonhexium. I know that one.
Okay.
That's the only one I know.
Okay, ununpentium is the 115. And if you pump a proton into ununpentium, which is stable, it makes it 116. 116 is unstable, and it decays, and when it decays, it's a total annihilation, and it throws off two things, the gravity A wave and antimatter.
Are other governments part of this, or is it just us?
A lot of them are. We're closest to the Canadians on this. And as you may remember the story I told Art Bell years ago, the guy that came to my house, and he was Air Force photographer stationed in Honolulu, and he got TDY, temporary duty assignment, to Norton. When he got to Norton, he was put in a limo with the windows blacked out and taken somewhere near 29 Palms, and it went down in an elevator. The car went down in an elevator. He got out. They told him to change in this change room. He put on a smock, a cap, and booties, and they gave him a camera, and he walked into this hangar, and there was a ladder up to a saucer, which was maybe about, he says, 40 feet in diameter. He went up the ladder, and he said he poked his head inside to put the camera in there, and he said, John, he said, I couldn't believe it. He said, when I poked my head inside, I could have thrown a football and not hit the edge of the saucer. He said it was so big.
Gosh.
And he said, I stepped back out on the ladder to see if this thing was really, like 40 feet, which wasn't all that big, and it's 40 feet. And he said, I poked my head back in, and he said it had to be 200 feet to the edge of the thing. And he said one of the scientists, he had a Canadian accent, said, come on, guy, we've got to, get some pictures here. And so he went in and he took pictures as they put their hands over consoles, and it would go down and go up and that kind of stuff.
I sometimes think we're on the verge of breaking the biggest story of all mankind, John. I mean, it's there for us.
It could be. I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Stay with us. We're going to take phone calls now next hour in this rapid program. I'm George Norrie.